it's this dilemma of whether or not. Okay, I'll just lay out the situation and then I'll explain what the dilemma is supposed to kind of be. So you have these kids, right? These kids are, let's say, clones of people, right? So let's say I have like a liver issue, right? Like something happened to my liver or something happened to my heart or something, right? Obviously, the best donor for a transplant for me would be
You.
yeah, it's me, right? So you just make a clone of me, right? And
Yeah.
then when they're like 18, boom, yeah, you cut him up, you get rid of the organs, and then you give him to me. Obviously, he dies; he doesn't have organs, right? But for those 18
What?
years, for those 18
Yeah.
years, that clone got to live a super happy life. You know, he got taken care of. He had friends who were also clones or whatever. I don't know. That's what the movie was like. It was like a little institution where they did this, and they had like a good time up until that point. Their life was worth living. It was worthwhile, even though. Or actually, no, sorry. That's kind of a. I'm kind of jumping a conclusion here. The question is that still worthwhile to do? Is it like an okay thing to do to produce clones for like organ
Um.
harvesting, even if they're never gonna have the chance to grow up to be an adult, grow old, have their own decisions? Like you already predetermined they are gonna die.
Oh, I
So
totally
with
I.
remember like hearing about like
yeah,
this
Yeah.
concept
so
before.
I
so
think I've discussed about this
one
too.
argument
Yeah.
one argument is that like with those restrictions in place, like how much would it suck to be born knowing that yeah, bro, I got 18 years on the clock and then I'm gonna get cut up, you know, like I'm being used basically. So that's one argument against it, saying like that wouldn't be morally okay. But then the other argument in favor of it, which I think is like, is pretty strong. I think it's a little trickier to argue against it, and then some people might give it credit for. But it's like, you know, to those clones or whatever, they still got 18 years that they wouldn't have had otherwise if you didn't clone them. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So the question is like, with that sort of like time limit imposed and like their unfortunate fate is kind of like sealed as soon as they're born, does that negative outweigh the benefit of having them have like genuinely decent time as they grow older? I mean, obviously, you
I.
could argue that it would be impossible to have a decent time knowing that you're going to get turned into organs later on down the line. But what do you guys think about it?
So, um, with this, you're talking about like what's kind of the right or wrong thing and the different sides of it.
Yeah,
And
kind of like if
for
it's morally permissible or not.
yeah, like I said, I really just don't think about things in that way. I really just
Mm-hmm.
don't think of it
That's
as right
true.
or
Yeah.
wrong. I think of everything as just being very subjective, and that's a whole other conversation. But for me, what I think about it briefly, just in short, the way I think about it is just kind of like, do I like it or do I not, and why? I feel like that's more straightforward and meaningful in terms of getting to the
Mm-hmm.
actual kind of result and actually make decisions. So for me, I don't really like that. I don't like the idea that
Mm-hmm.
you're just growing clones. That whole concept as a whole, and the the fact that you're just using clones for their organs and just cutting them up like that, I like that even less. So for
Yeah.
me, I just really don't like it. And also to add the argument about them not being able to live a good life like that, I don't like that argument. I think it could definitely live a very fulfilling life, perhaps even
Hmm.
more fulfilling, knowing the ending point. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it could make things overall just more intentional and just have everything be more
Mm-hmm.
clear in your head about how you're living that life, you know. So for me, I don't like the idea. I could kind of see both sides of the argument, but I would say no to that concept.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with George. Like the thought about like the idea, like if it didn't have to happen, like then keep it that way. But if it was, real and like you can't do much about it, like I think it's worth for the clone to live because you're kind of deciding for someone else's life at that point. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to put them in like their perspective, like like what George does, and for that, like if you had the chance to live, why wouldn't you take it?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants to live, everyone wants to enjoy life, you know, like even if you know you're gonna die, that makes it a lot more like once you, I
Yeah,
guess,
everybody knows they're gonna die, but knowing that you're
exactly,
gonna die
you
at
just don't know
18,
when. Yeah,
exactly.
I think if the clones were to accept it, I feel like they could live a really enjoyable and happy life. Um, no matter the ending, because they like if you knew when you were gonna die, you would do everything that's gonna make you happy, the most happy. Do what you actually want to do. I feel like that's what the clones would probably do. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
no, like I just think it's. I feel like to have life is something pretty special. You
Right.
can't really take it away, even if they are clones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I, yeah, a couple things what they're just saying. Like, I think maybe a good solution for that scenario would be like have the have those clones um have a vote themselves
Mm-hmm.
about kind of, it's similar to kind of the I don't know if it's a court case or whatever, but as technology are developing, people like we're kind of are able to prevent stuff like Down syndrome or whatnot. Then you have
Mm-hmm.
like Down syndrome people representing themselves, kind of just talking about how their lives are not they're they're worth living, and
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't just artificially prevent it from happening that way. Um, so I don't know the exact
Mm-hmm.
details about that, but it definitely reminds me of that, and I think the clones themselves should have a say and kind of uh, be a big part of the decision making, as you were saying, Raymond.
Mm-hmm.